My name is Clara Whitmore, but most people just call me Claire. I was the quiet one in the family, the daughter who stayed behind when everyone else moved away. I was the one who took care of my father when his health declined, the one who managed the estate when it became too heavy for him, the one who kept the Whitmore house alive when it could have easily been left to rot. The Whitmore house wasn't just a home, it was our family's soul. Every brick laid by my father, Charles Whitmore, every magnolia tree in the garden planted with his own hands. He told me once that the flowers would outlast him, that their roots would hold even when everything else failed. And as I stood among them after his funeral, I felt the weight of that truth, until an unwelcome shadow fell across the garden. I didn't need to look up when I heard the sound of heels crunching against gravel. Only one person in the world walked into places she didn't belong with that much confidence. Vanessa Carter, my ex-husband's wife. The same woman he cheated with while I was still wearing a wedding ring. She was dressed like she'd just stepped out of a fashion magazine, her perfume sharp enough to sting the air between us. "Well, well," she said, voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Still digging in the dirt, Claire?" I stayed silent, clipping away at a thorny branch, careful not to crush the petals. But she didn't stop. "You know why I'm here. The will is tomorrow, and Ethan and I thought it best to settle things civilly." "There's nothing to settle," I said, finally, wiping my hands on my apron and turning to face her. "This is my father's home." "Was," she corrected, her lips curling into a smirk. "And since Ethan was like a son to Charles for 15 years, we believe we're entitled to our fair share." My grip tightened on the shears. "The same Ethan who betrayed me with you?" I asked, my voice low and steady. Vanessa only shrugged. "Your father forgave him. He forgave us. They still played golf every Sunday." She turned as if the conversation were already over. "You might want to start packing. We'll need at least a month to renovate once we move in." Her car pulled away, leaving behind only the echo of her arrogance. I stood in the garden, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from the fire building in my chest. 2 weeks. Only 2 weeks since my father's funeral, and already they circled like vultures. I bent to gather the magnolia petals Vanessa had crushed beneath her heels. That's when I saw it. Half buried in the soil, damp with dew, was a small envelope. Its corner stuck out just enough to catch my eye. I froze. The handwriting was unmistakable. My father's, steady, bold, deliberate. It read, "For Claire." My breath caught. My father's voice echoed in my memory, calm and certain. I brushed away the dirt, my pulse racing. Inside, the envelope felt heavier than it should have, as though it carried more than just words. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I called the only person I trusted with something like this, Danielle Foster, my best friend and attorney. "I just paid me a visit," I told her when she answered. "She's worse than we thought." Danielle didn't hesitate. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, and I'm bringing wine." When she arrived, we sat in my father's study, the envelope resting like a loaded gun between us. My hands shook as I broke the seal. Inside was a folded letter and a small brass key. "Dear Claire," I read aloud, my father's words filling the silent room. "If you're reading this, someone has already tried to make a move on the estate. Knowing human nature, I'd wager it's Vanessa. She always reminded me of a shark. All teeth, no soul. The key opens the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside, you'll find everything you need to protect what's yours." I read the letter again, slower this time, my father's voice echoing in every word. "Remember what I taught you about chess?" It said, "Sometimes you sacrifice a pawn to protect the queen." My eyes blurred, but I kept going. "The drawer holds everything you need. Use it wisely. Love always, Dad." Danielle leaned back in her chair, her lawyer's instincts sharp as ever. "She knew this was coming," she murmured, sipping her wine. "Claire, your father didn't just hope for the best. He planned for the worst." The brass key glinted in my palm like a warning bell before battle. The lock clicked open as I slid the key into place. The bottom drawer of my father's desk groaned like it had been waiting for this moment. Inside was a thick manila envelope and a small USB drive, neatly labeled in his handwriting. I lifted them carefully, my chest heavy with dread and anticipation. Danielle's expression turned solemn. She said, "There's more. 3 days before he passed, your father added a modification to his will, a clause that's going to change everything." I stared at her. "What kind of clause?" She smiled, just faintly. "The kind that sets a trap." We spread the contents of the envelope across the desk. Surveillance photos, bank statements, email printouts. One photo in particular made my stomach drop. Vanessa in a dark parking lot, handing something to a man in a suit. My father had them followed. He had proof. Danielle tapped the evidence with her pen. "This isn't just suspicion. This is airtight." Her voice dropped lower. "He built this case piece by piece, knowing exactly what they'd try." I ran my hand across the photos, my chest tightening. This wasn't just a will, it was a chessboard, and my father had already made his final move. That night the house felt colder, the air heavier. I sat in the study, my father's letter still open on my lap, the evidence spread across the oak desk. Grief twisted with rage until I couldn't tell them apart. That's when a knock sounded at the front door. I opened it to find my brother, Andrew Whitmore, standing there. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes hollow, and his leather portfolio gripped like a shield. He looked nothing like the polished man from the funeral. "You look terrible," I said flatly. His reply was a bitter half-smile. "Playing double agent isn't as glamorous as the movies make it out to be. Can I come in?" Andrew stepped into the study and stared at the evidence scattered across the desk. His jaw tightened. "I see you found Dad's insurance policy," he muttered. I crossed my arms. "Why didn't you tell me what you were doing?" My voice was sharp, sharper than I intended. "Because I had to make things right," he said quietly. He opened his portfolio and slid a check across the desk. $500,000. My eyes widened. "Vanessa offered me this to testify that Dad wasn't of sound mind when he changed his will. But I didn't take it. I gave it straight to Dad, and that's when he told me the plan." Andrew's voice cracked as he pulled out a phone from his jacket. "He recorded everything," he said. "The meetings, the threats, even Vanessa's voice on tape. Want to hear what she said?" He pressed play before I could answer. Her voice spilled into the study, cold and casual. "So, once the old man kicks it, we'll contest the will. Andrew, you'll testify about his mental state. Ethan will back it up. Claire won't know what hit her." My hands curled into fists. Andrew fast-forwarded, and now Ethan's voice joined hers. "We'll sell the house, liquidate everything. Clara can go back to her little gardening hobby. She never deserved it anyway." I whispered, "Turn it off." Andrew obeyed, his shoulders heavy with guilt. "There's more," he said. "Vanessa wasn't just after money. She wanted revenge." "Revenge? For what?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Andrew's jaw clenched. For embarrassing her, for catching them together, for making Ethan feel guilty. His words hit like a blade, twisting in an old wound. I remembered that night too clearly. The bedroom door flung open, Vanessa's smug smile, my entire world collapsing in a single moment. She started embezzling from Dad's company months before his diagnosis. That's when he found out, and that's when he began building this. He gestured toward the evidence scattered on the desk. My father hadn't just left me a home. He had left me a weapon, a plan designed not out of anger, but out of foresight. And suddenly I knew. Vanessa thought she was walking into an inheritance. Instead, she was walking straight into a storm. The morning of the will reading dawned clear and sharp, sunlight cutting across the Whitmore estate like a spotlight. I barely touched my coffee, my stomach in knots, every nerve ready for war. In the study, Danielle laid out files across the oak desk, her every movement precise, rehearsed. This wasn't just a legal meeting, it was theater. Vanessa had arranged for cameras to document the event, convinced she'd look gracious inheriting part of the Whitmore legacy. She wanted history to record her triumph.
What she didn't know was that history had other plans. Every light they set up, every camera lens trained on us would capture the very moment the trap snapped shut. Andrew slipped into the room mid-morning, looking sharper than the night before. He gave me a brief nod. She's outside, rehearsing her thank you speech. He wants to know if the chandelier lighting flatters her. I almost left. Almost. Heavy footsteps echoed through the hall. Vanessa entered first, draped in a black designer dress that screamed, "Look at me, mourn." Ethan trailed behind, stiff in his tailored suit. The camera crew followed, adjusting equipment like this was a red carpet premiere. Vanessa's eyes swept over the study with ownership already written in them. "We're ready," she announced with a smug smile. Danielle rose, her voice steady and commanding. "As the legal representative of the late Charles Whitmore, I will now read his last will and testament, along with any supplementary documents he prepared." Vanessa's chin tilted higher, her confidence radiating like perfume. She thought she was about to win. The first pages were simple. Small bequests to charities, minor items for distant relatives. Vanessa barely blinked. But then Danielle reached the main distribution. "To my daughter, Clara Whitmore, 60% of all estate assets, including the family home, business shares, and remaining holdings. To my former son-in-law, Ethan Carter, and his current wife, Vanessa Carter, a combined share totaling 40%. Vanessa gasped, her smile spreading wide. She grabbed Ethan's arm and whispered, "I knew it. He loved us too much to leave us out." Vanessa barely contained her glee as the camera zoomed in, ready to capture her victory. But Danielle's tone shifted, her words sharper now. "However," she continued, "a conditional trust integrity clause was added 3 days before Mr. Whitmore's passing. Acceptance of any portion of the estate under this will is contingent on a full review of financial activity and personal conduct." Vanessa's smile froze mid-performance. "What is that supposed to mean?" she snapped. Ethan leaned toward Danielle, trying to mask his unease. "What kind of clause?" he demanded. Danielle calmly broke the seal on a second envelope and placed it on the desk. "The kind that exposes the truth." Danielle spread the contents across the polished oak like a dealer revealing a winning hand. Surveillance photos, signed bank records, email chains, the USB drive. Proof layered on proof. Vanessa lunged forward, snatching up a photo of herself in that dark parking lot. "Where did you get this?" she hissed. Andrew stepped forward, his voice cutting like a blade. "Dad had you followed. He recorded your meetings, your calls, everything." Vanessa whipped toward the camera crew. "Turn those off," she shouted. But no one moved. For the first time, she realized the performance was no longer hers to control. "Oh no," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "You wanted the cameras, remember? You wanted history to see you win. Well, they're still rolling." Danielle's voice rose above Vanessa's protests. Under the clause, any party found guilty of manipulation, fraud, or malicious intent forfeits their share, effective immediately.
Ethan's face went pale, his composure cracking. Vanessa's hands shook as she slammed the photo back onto the desk. "This is a setup," she screamed. Andrew didn't flinch. "No, this is Dad's plan, and you walked right into it." The room shifted then, the air thick, the cameras unblinking. The game had changed, and they knew it. Ethan grabbed a bank statement, his voice shaking. "This doesn't prove anything. Where did you get all this?" I met his eyes, unblinking. "From the drawer," I said. "The one Dad left for me, the one only I had the key to." Danielle nodded toward the cameras. "Everything you've said, everything you've done, it's all on the record. And now it's part of a legal file." "You can't do this," Vanessa shrieked, her voice cracking under the weight of panic. But Danielle stayed calm. "You already signed the acceptance papers. That activated the clause. Fraud discovered after the fact doesn't just revoke your inheritance, it makes the entire record public." Vanessa's mouth opened, but no sound came. Her empire was crumbling, and the cameras caught every fracture.
Vanessa spun toward Ethan, desperation clawing through her polished mask. "Do something," she begged. But Ethan looked 10 years older in that moment. His shoulders slumped, his voice hollow. "There's nothing to do." Silence followed, broken only by the soft hum of the recording equipment. The crew looked on, transfixed. "You helped yourself to his money, his company, and you tried to erase me," I said, my voice calm but edged with steel. Andrew stepped closer. "But Dad saw you coming, and now everyone else does too." Vanessa's face cracked, her confidence shattered. The performance she'd planned had become her public undoing, recorded for all time. Vanessa's scream rattled the study walls. She shoved the papers off the desk, scattering evidence across the floor like broken glass. "This is a lie," she screamed, her mascara streaking as the mask slipped. Ethan tried to pull her back, whispering frantically, but she slapped his arm away. The cameras caught everything: the fury, the desperation, the unraveling of a woman who thought she'd already won. Andrew leaned against the doorframe, his voice low. "She's burning her own stage." For once, I didn't feel the need to stop her. Every word, every gesture was digging her grave deeper. Ethan's composure cracked next. He tried to stand tall, but the tremor in his hands betrayed him. "If this goes public, I'll lose everything. My clients, my practice." His words trailed off, the realization dawning like a storm. He wasn't just losing money, he was losing his reputation. Danielle didn't flinch. "You should have thought about that before conspiring with her. Fraud has consequences, Ethan, and your signature is all over these." Ethan stared at the bank statements in his hand, his face ashen. The man who once left me for power and vanity now looked like a hollow shell. Danielle pulled out one last item from the envelope, a letter, handwritten, sealed with my father's initials. "He wanted this read aloud," she explained. My breath caught as she unfolded it. His voice lived in every line. "To my daughter, Clara, if you're hearing this, it means I am gone. But know this, my eyes never closed to the truth." Tears burned my eyes as I listened. "They betrayed you, but they cannot break you. I built this not only to protect our legacy, but to protect you. Use it. Do not fear them. They will destroy themselves." Vanessa shifted uneasily in her chair. For the first time, she looked small. The camera crew huddled together, whispering. One finally spoke up, holding out a microphone. "Do you want us to cut this, or—" Danielle's answer was swift. "No, this stays." Vanessa lunged toward them, wild-eyed. "I forbid it," she cried. But Danielle's words cut through her desperation. "You don't have that power anymore." Every lens captured her crumbling dignity. This wasn't the victory speech she rehearsed. This was evidence of her downfall, broadcast raw and unfiltered. "Delete it," she screamed, clawing at the nearest camera. But Ethan didn't move to help her. His silence said everything. He knew it was already too late. The crew's faces hardened. They weren't just bystanders anymore. They were witnesses. And witnesses talk. "People will see this," one muttered under his breath. Vanessa spun toward Ethan, her voice shrill. "Say something. Fix this." Ethan buried his face in his hands, unable to meet her gaze. The silence in the room became its own kind of verdict. Vanessa had wanted an audience, and now she had one. But instead of applause, she received judgment. Every breath, every glare weighed heavier than words. She was alone, and she knew it. I stood, my hands steady on the desk. "You wanted to erase me, to take everything my father built and twist it into your own empire. But you forgot one thing." Vanessa glared at me, her lips trembling. "What?" she spat. I looked into the nearest camera. "The truth doesn't die with the man who saw it. It lives on. And now, so does his justice." My voice rang in the air, echoing louder than her screams. For the first time since this all began, I felt powerful, not as a victim, but as the heir my father believed in. Ethan finally snapped. "Enough," he shouted, shoving his chair back. His voice was raw, stripped of the charm he once wore like armor. I never wanted this. I just. His words faltered under the weight of the cameras. I just didn't want to lose everything. Vanessa's eyes widened, betrayal etched across her face. You coward, she hissed. After everything, you fold now? Ethan couldn't meet her gaze. This was never about us. It was about greed, and we lost. His confession wasn't dramatic, it was hollow, defeated, and it was caught on film. Vanessa lunged at Andrew, jabbing a finger in his chest. You betrayed me. You were supposed to be on our side. Andrew didn't even blink. I was on Dad's side, always. Her fury only deepened. You'll regret this, she spat. But her threats had no teeth left. The more she lashed out, the smaller she appeared. She had entered the room like a queen preparing for coronation. Now she looked like a desperate pretender, clinging to a crown that never truly belonged to her. Danielle closed the file with finality. This concludes the will reading, she said. The words echoed like a gavel strike. Ethan rose slowly, his face pale, his eyes hollow. Without another word, he turned and walked out, leaving Vanessa behind. The cameras followed him, recording every step of defeat. Vanessa spun in place, realization dawning. She had no allies left, no husband, no legal claim, no legacy, just shattered pride and a reputation about to be destroyed. For the first time, she didn't scream. She just stood there, trembling. The room emptied, silence settling over the study like a crown placed on my head. I sat back down, my father's letter still in my hand. It's over, I whispered. But Danielle leaned closer, her eyes steady. No, Clara. This is just the beginning. You don't just inherit his estate, you inherit his fight. I looked at the scattered evidence, the broken faces still etched in memory, and felt the truth sink in. I wasn't just the quiet one anymore. I was the heir, the protector, the one that outlasted the storm. And for the first time in years, I felt free. The footage didn't stay in the study. Within days, snippets leaked online. Vanessa's screaming face, Ethan's hollow confession, Andrew's steady voice. Every outlet picked it up. Heiress humiliates family and will reading scandal, read one headline. The video spread like wildfire. Strangers debated their betrayal in comment sections, dissecting every sneer and stammer. Vanessa had wanted recognition, now she had it, just not the kind she could survive. Ethan's law firm tried to contain the damage, but clients fled faster than statements could be drafted. We can't be tied to fraud, one partner said in a leaked email. His office, once buzzing with power, turned into an empty shell. At home, he drowned in silence. The man who left me for success now had neither love nor reputation. His voice once commanded courtrooms, now it barely filled his own kitchen.
Vanessa tried to fight back, posting tearful videos and blaming misinterpretations, but the internet remembered too clearly. Memes mocked her dramatic outburst. Clips replayed her lies on loop. Every attempt at control only deepened her humiliation. She stormed into Danielle's office one afternoon, demanding retractions. Danielle simply held up the signed clause. The truth doesn't need editing, Vanessa. It speaks for itself. Business partners, once eager to align with Vanessa, pulled away. Deals collapsed, invitations dried up. The glamorous socialite who thrived on appearances was now whispered about as poison. Her phone rang less and less, until only silence remained. When she did get calls, they weren't offers, they were threats of lawsuits. Her empire had turned to ash. Meanwhile, I walked the halls of the estate, my father's presence lingering in every frame and every note. He had built this not for wealth, but for endurance. Protect it, his letter had said. I began restoring what mattered, his garden, his study, his reputation. The legacy was no longer a battlefield. It was a home, and now it was mine to guard. Andrew showed up one evening, hesitant at the gate. I didn't just bring evidence, he admitted.
I stayed because I was tired of lying. His voice was raw, stripped of excuses. We walked the grounds together, the weight of years between us. For the first time, he wasn't my brother's ally or Vanessa's pawn. He was just Andrew, broken but willing to mend. Danielle filed the case formally. Fraud, coercion, conspiracy to contest a will. Vanessa and Ethan were both named. The papers hit like lightning, forcing them into the one place they feared most: court. The same cameras that once captured their greed now turned on their trial. The world watched not just for scandal, but for justice, and this time the stage belonged to me. Ethan tried to defend himself, but his voice lacked conviction. Every recording, every signature, every word he'd said played back louder than his excuses. He claimed I was pressured, but the jury only heard guilt. Watching him stumble, I didn't feel pity. I felt closure. The man who betrayed me with both my friend and my father's trust was no longer untouchable. He was accountable. Vanessa strutted into court, dressed like a queen, but the crown slipped quickly. Under questioning, her lies collapsed. Danielle's evidence, bank transfers, private recordings, emails, shredded her performance. By the end of her testimony, her voice broke. She wasn't untouchable anymore. She wasn't admired. She was exposed, naked in her greed, trembling in her defeat. The verdict came down, swift and merciless. Guilty of fraud and coercion, assets seized, reputations destroyed. Their empire turned to dust. And when the gavel struck, the weight on my chest finally lifted. I left the courthouse into sunlight that felt like freedom. I hadn't just inherited an estate. I had claimed justice. And for once, I didn't look back. The night after the trial, the estate was so quiet it almost felt haunted. No lawyers, no cameras, no screaming accusations, just me, sitting in my father's study with a single lamp burning. For the first time in months, I wasn't bracing for the next attack. The silence wasn't empty. It was peace. The tabloids that once celebrated Vanessa's every outfit now dragged her name through the mud. Pictures surfaced of her slipping out of cheap hotels, face hidden, hair disheveled. She had always thrived on attention. Now the spotlight she craved had turned into a cruel, unrelenting glare she couldn't escape. Ethan tried to rebuild his law career, but no firm would touch him. His reputation was radioactive. Even old colleagues avoided him in public. The man who once lectured me about status was now renting a one-bedroom apartment, begging for freelance work that never came. His arrogance had finally bankrupted him. Andrew showed up at the estate gate again, holding no evidence this time, just an apology. His eyes were tired, but different. Less defensive, more sincere. "I betrayed you," he admitted, "but I don't want that to be the last thing you remember me for." For the first time, I didn't slam the door on him. I spent weeks restoring my father's vision. The gardens blossomed under careful hands, the study became a library of his life's work, and the estate finally felt alive again. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about proving that his legacy and mine was stronger than greed, stronger than betrayal, and impossible to erase. Vanessa tried to claw her way back into society. She contacted old friends, sent emails, even begged for small favors. But doors that once opened effortlessly now slammed in her face. Every message she sent eventually leaked online, each one dripping with desperation. The woman who once mocked me for being invisible had become invisible herself. Forgotten, dismissed, irrelevant. Ethan, drowning in debt, made one last attempt to salvage his career. He filed an appeal, claiming he'd been misled by Vanessa. But the court wasn't fooled. The evidence still stood tall. When his appeal was denied, it was like the last lifeline had been cut. He was left stranded, jobless, reputation ruined, and with no allies left to manipulate. One evening, I sat in the study with my father's final letter in my hands. His handwriting, steady and deliberate, seemed to speak across time. Strength is not in revenge, Clara. It's in survival. For months, I thought victory meant their downfall. But now I understood. It was about me standing tall, protecting what he built, and choosing to live free of their shadows. Andrew returned once more, not with guilt this time, but with effort. He rolled up his sleeves and helped repair the estate grounds, cutting weeds, hauling stones, fixing what had been left to rot. For the first time, we worked side by side, as siblings instead of rivals. In the evenings, he would share stories about Dad, things I had never known. Small details, like the way he hummed when fixing a clock, or how he always carried peppermints in his pocket. Those stories stitched together a warmth I thought I'd lost forever. And slowly, I realized Andrew wasn't just making amends with me, he was making peace with himself. That was a different kind of justice, one Dad would have wanted me to honor. On the final day of spring, I stood in the garden my father once tended, now alive with color. The estate no longer felt like a battlefield. It was home, my home. Vanessa and Ethan had faded into the world's background, stripped of everything they once valued. Their downfall had been spectacular, but I didn't need to chase it anymore. Their punishment was simply being who they truly were. As the sun set, I felt the weight of it all settle into something lighter. My father hadn't left me wealth. He had left me resilience. My inheritance wasn't just bricks and land. It was the strength to rise after betrayal, to rebuild after loss, and to stand unshaken when the storm finally cast.